So, first of all, state your name and who do you work for?
Aaron Erickson, I work for Magenic.
And you?
Corey Miller, and I also work for Magenic.
And both of you work out of the Chicago branch, is that correct?
That's correct.
All right.
That's correct.
So, what are you going to be talking about today, Corey?
Basically, building an application that interacts is the title, and it's talking about building.
An application that interacts?
Well, it's about building the next generation of applications that are more than just form-based, using technologies like Silverlight.
Okay. All right. And what are you going to be talking about, Aaron?
Talking about the intersection of F# and LINQ.
Okay. Now, have you done a talk like this before up here? I can't remember. You're always talking about LINQ, so...
I've done one talk on LINQ, one
Okay.
talk on F#.
Now
This
you're-
one puts them together.
Ah, so this is like the conclusion of the trilogy?
Yes.
Okay.
And oh, it's so exciting. It's
So can you give me a preview? Because you said you were like, you came up with your own ray tracer code, right?
no. Good question.
Yeah.
No. I took Luke Hoban's C# ray tracer, and before I realized they had already converted it to F#, converted it on my own. So
Nice.
we'll be demonstrating that and showing some.
Do you have that up in your laptop now?
Actually, no, but I can have it
Okay.
up.
Well, why don't you do that? And while you're doing that, I'm going to go back to Corey here and get some more details from him. So how long have you been working with Silverlight?
I've actually been working in a production environment since January, in the alpha bits of Silverlight 2.
How painful or wonderful has that experience been, especially with just working with, with these alphabets, with this technology that's so new?
Well, when I came in, they had already tried to make a run of it, and I had a background in Flash and Flash development in the early days when we had to create controls from scratch.
Okay.
Rarely in Flash did we ever use the controls that came with the Flash API. So,
Why is that?
Because they were very expensive.
Really?
They were really bloated. Every time you use a control,
Oh, so expensive from a
size wise.
Oh, okay, not expensive from a dollar size.
Yeah. No.
Okay, I gotcha.
So they were expensive to use because they boosted up. I mean, you'd add 100K for every control you added that was unique. So,
Especially since you're in a web environment, size
Yeah.
is definitely...
well, early on,
size
that was
matters.
back when that was back when the web was really done by a lot of dial-up and everything else. So size was a major issue in those days. Now, I mean, we have 100K is something we can laugh at. But
Right.
So when I went into it, Silverlight just kind of made sense. I mean, I really didn't have too much. It took a day to kind of get ramped up with what XAML is and everything else, but we actually turned something around and completely remade something within a week to a week and a half.
Okay. So what do you like from Silverlight over Flash? And to give
Well, I'm a
the other
.NET
side.
developer.
Well, yeah, I know, but I mean, do you see any advantages using Silverlight over Flash and vice versa?
Well, this is also part of my talk is about how to think. I do a user group for developer and designer collaboration, and I think that is really the true key to what makes Silverlight and WPF more powerful than Flash from that standpoint. Flash just doesn't have the collaboration techniques in it either.
Okay.
They have two separate environments for designers and developers, and they're still working that out too.
Okay.
So they've worked it out from a non-tool perspective of how to do collaboration, where Microsoft has really built collaboration into their tool and their technique.
Okay.
The difference between XAML and .NET, when you go to the code behind it as XAML, I mean, you can definitely, there's two different worlds there, and there's a way to work independently, which is what I'm going to be talking about.
Okay. Then the thing probably with Flash that's an advantage is just because it's been around longer, it's got a bigger user base.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's definitely not going to replace Flash in any means, but it definitely gives the .NET community some power.
Okay. Cool. All right, now Aaron, do you got your...
Yes, I do.
You do. Okay, so I'm going to wander over there, grab my coffee while I'm at it. Check this out.
This is a ray tracer implemented in F#. Now,
Okay.
Ray tracing, as maybe not most people know, but as graphics people tend to know, is a fairly slow and intensive way to generate a very photorealistic
Yeah, because I saw
image.
it actually just like slowly creeping off to the right as it was rendering it.
Right,
So-
rendering one by one every little bit, which it uses by having a camera and then taking a ray literally and saying go through the object and figure out what the surfaces are. So this is the actual end product. This is kind of the reverse. Normally we just look at code and then see it. But what you see here are just a little piece of some pieces of what LINQ looks like in F#, which you'll tend to find you use a series of different, it's not necessarily the same keywords that you use in C#, where you're oriented towards words like where and select and order by, which have a SQL-ness to them.
Right.
In F#, you're using terms that are more mathematically oriented towards set theory. So things like map, filter, sort by. You'll see up here just some examples of reduce, fold, and some things like that.
Okay.
That are some of the things that we're going to talk about in our talk are some of the expanded things versus what you do in C#, which is you have some things that are in there about just the basics of what you would use in set theory. We go into some of the more expanded set things that you can do in set theory using F#, which is really taking the concepts of LINQ, which is really all about set theory, way more than databases and all that other stuff that you hear about with LINQ, and just blowing that out and doing all sorts of other more interesting things.
So is that ray tracer? Is that something that you could actually speed up by doing some parallel computations?
Yes.
Is that something that you actually can show here or not? Not
I'm,
yet?
I'm working on it.
Working on it.
Getting the tricky part is getting it to actually work with the form, but getting the actual image generated in the background, that's not been a challenge. So.
Okay, because that's one of the advantages supposedly of F# is that it's geared towards parallelism pretty much out of the box, because you have immutable types, you have where you're encouraged to have side effect free functions and things like that. Okay.
Absolutely, and certainly it's actually pretty easy to do. We have a method, and I might even try doing it in the talk, where you set up an asynchronous workflow and you generate literally a set of each of the pixels with a series of separate async tasks, and then use the async.parallel method in F# to just say spawn all these off and do them, which we've experimented with, but we're still working on it. Work.
Cool. So last question. We know that F# is definitely going to be part of Visual Studio 2010. Do you think there's going to be a mass, I want to say exodus from other languages, but do you think there's going to be a wide, huge adoption of F# when that comes in when that language is finally a first-class citizen? Because my opinion has been F# is never going to really be a language that people are going to gravitate towards until it gets into Visual Studio, and I think that's true for any Microsoft developer, that their language of choice really won't have widespread adoption until it gets into that IDE. Is that something you agree with or not?
Well, I think it's largely something I agree with. I mean, the fact that F# will be on every Microsoft developer's footprint in a couple of years, that's going to draw some people to it. I think it has to live on its own. I think the parallel story has to actually play out and become fairly easy to do. But if those things happen, and I think there's a pretty good chance that they will, there's going to be a good reason for somebody to try to do multi-language development. C# is always going to be, and I could be wrong, but my opinion is that C# is always going to be the language for managing forms, for doing the kind, because most of our form libraries, most of our and whatnot, are still based on mutable types. Okay, so if you want to put some text in a text box, you're doing that with state. You're not really doing that the way you would program something in F#. I think for certain kinds of applications, workflow applications certainly, some service-oriented architecture stuff on the middle tier, those are all great places for F#, and that's probably where it will be seen first. I don't think you'll be seeing enterprises say, hey, we're going to do F# for everything anytime soon. Maybe a couple, but it's not going to be a mainstream thing, in my opinion. But I could be wrong.
All right. Well, thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Corey.